Marvel's Spider-Man 2 dives deep into the psyche of Miles Morales and Peter Parker. By exploring these characters, the game reveals a crucial aspect of human nature. Underneath our masked heroes is a darkness present in all of us. In this video, we'll be examining the game and its characters from a Jungian perspective. If you don't know, Carl Jung was the founder of analytical psychology. In summary, analytical psychology is the process of diving deep into the individual's psyche, analyzing the conscious and unconscious aspects of their mind in order to promote self-discovery, personal growth, and balance in their life and being. As you can tell, having this psychological framework is not only useful, but crucial for a video about analyzing the psychology of Spider-Man 2. I also want to let you guys know that I'm not an expert in this field. I'm just a dude who read a book and knows how to use the internet. So with that out of the way, let's hop right into it. I want to begin our analysis with Miles Morales.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
As he crawls to the interior of a sinking ship, looking for those who could be trapped. On this mission, he hears the cry of a man begging to be rescued. Miles bursts through the door, only to realize that the man he just saved was the villain Scorpion. As a reward for his heroic action, Scorpion strikes Miles with his stinger, leaving him to be buried under the collapsing metal and rising water. Now, the next sequence of events is very interesting. If you didn't know, Scorpion's stinger releases a venom that causes hallucinations. So after Scorpion attacked Miles, his poison took immediate effect. Miles has entered another world, his mind. In this dream state, Miles sees his late father lying on the ground, but after a sudden explosion, he's thrown deeper into the water. Players then swim through the abyss, looking for a way to reach the surface. As we move through the watery haze, visions and voices begin to appear. They look and sound like Miles' friends, his family, all of them condemning him.
It's so peaceful without Miles. Now that you're Spider-Man, I don't have to worry anymore. None of us have to die.
Won't let anything happen to you.
Look, I don't know if Insomniac Games did this on purpose, but this whole sequence is straight out of a Carl Jung textbook. According to Jungian symbolism, water represents the unconscious. Carl Jung believed that our mind was composed of conscious and unconscious elements. The conscious part of our mind contains thoughts, feelings, and experiences that we're aware of. The unconscious constitutes the aspects of ourselves that we're unaware of, but still influence our behavior and well-being. You can think of our psyche as an iceberg, where the conscious part of our mind is the tip of the iceberg and something we can see, while the unconscious part is the rest of the iceberg and is largely hidden. It's also worth noting that dreams are an integral part of Jungian psychology. They're messengers that dredge out the recesses of our minds. To Jung, dreams are unfiltered and reveal to us things we've stored away in our psyche. So with this context in mind, we can view this level in Spider-Man 2 as representing Miles' personal unconscious. Scorpion's poison is the agent that allows Miles to enter a dream state. And as he's submerged in the water, he's also being brought deeper into his unconscious. All of his repressed doubts of being a hero, his fears of disappointing those he cares about, are made manifest in the voices and visions of his loved ones. This is a nightmare, and as with many nightmares, there's a monster in the end. For Miles, this monster is Martin Lee. Martin Lee is a supervillain introduced in Spider-Man 1. To the outside world, he was a philanthropist. As the founder of Feast, he established homeless shelters all throughout New York City. But underneath Lee's public persona is Mr. Negative, a crime lord and terrorist, the man responsible for killing Miles' father. After reaching the surface, Miles encounters Lee trapped in a cell. Now, the framing of this scene is very interesting to me. It's as if Miles is looking into a mirror below him, and what he sees is a demon. From a psychological perspective, we can view Lee as the memory, the anger, the guilt that has burrowed the deepest into his unconscious. Lee is begging Spider-Man to rescue him, but Miles just stands there and looks. There's a part of him that wants Lee to die, to drown in the water. Symbolically, this moment can be seen as Miles wanting to bury Lee into his unconscious mind, to wash him away as a painful memory. From a Jungian perspective, we can view Miles' encounter with Lee as him interacting with his shadow. The shadow archetype is the dark side of an individual's personality. It consists of the thoughts, feelings, and traits that a person's not fully aware of or refuses to acknowledge. Shadows are seen through projection. What we hate about ourselves or what we've repressed in our psyche, we tend to project onto others unconsciously. For Miles, the subject of his projection is Martin Lee. And I don't think I'm being too far-fetched stretched here. It makes sense that Lee would be Miles' shadow. Think about it. Lee is responsible for killing his dad, he's literally called Mr. Negative, and his superpower is harnessing and manipulating dark energy. The guy looks like he belongs in a true crime documentary. Lee was a good guy. Until he wasn't. He is the total embodiment of all the things Miles hates and has repressed. But facing your shadow isn't all bad. It can be dangerous, but it's not all negative.
Oh, brother!
Working with your shadow also unlocks hidden potential, and we see this happen multiple times throughout the game. Besides dark energy manipulation, Martin Lee can also portion out his powers and share them with others. Whenever Miles and Lee are in contact with each other, Miles unlocks a new ability. We see this happen when Lee's energy merges with Miles in this scene, unlocking a new ability for Miles to shoot bursts of blue lightning from his hands. It's important to note that Lee hadn't just given Miles power, he had also given him purpose. After their encounter, Kraven's hunters captured Lee. Miles' chance for retribution had escaped, but his path of vengeance had just begun. What happened in the raft was only the beginning of Miles' descent. Later in the game, Miles and his best friend Genki meet up in Coney Island to check out Mysterio's latest attraction, a state-of-the-art VR exhibit that allows visitors to turn their hopes and dreams into reality. Upon entering, Miles becomes a DJ. Players then go through a rhythm minigame, yeah, you heard that right, where Miles gets to live out his dream as an accomplished musician. Ooh, sorry. But towards the end of the minigame, the music stops. The crowd disappears, and the only figure left is Martin Lee. Miles lunges towards him with another unlocked ability. What was once a dance floor has now become an arena, as Lee's demons swarm our masked hero. I'm not just saying demons for dramatic effect here. Mr. Negative's henchmen are known as the inner demons. So in this level, Miles is both literally and figuratively fighting his inner demons. His dream has become fragmented because Lee still has control over his mind, his being. Miles' mom, Rio, picks up on this when she checks in on her son.
I just wanted to check in. See how you're doing. ¿Todo bien?
Miles confesses to her that he's been stressed with trying to balance school life and his responsibilities as Spider-Man. And with Lee now out in the city, he feels an obligation to hunt him down. Rio notices how much control Lee has over Miles and urges him to let go. She recognizes that holding on to this hate only weighs him down and stops Miles from moving forward in his life. But Miles can't let go of Lee. He refuses to.
But Lee? I can't just let him go.
Lee and Miles will eventually collide in a duel set up by Kraven the Hunter. It's a battle to the death, and both are willing to kill. When the fight begins, Miles immediately confronts Lee of all the evil he has wrought as Mr. Negative. To Miles, Lee has shed blood, and blood must be paid in return. But Lee can't let that happen. In his own words, he doesn't want to die as the man he was.
What makes you think you deserve to live?
I won't die as the man that I was.
You don't get to walk away from what you did. The inner demons, Devil's Breath, the City Hall bombing.
Recount my sins to me.
Kraven sees this exchange below, and his insight is worth playing.
Awaken something in the spider, and you in him. Show me more.
Once again, it's revealed to the audience that Miles and Lee are two sides of the same coin. Both are more similar than they like to admit. In Spider-Man 1, we learned that Lee was a sickly child, desperate to help their son. Lee's parents sought the medical services of Norman Osborn. The plan was for him to undergo an experimental treatment for his condition, but during the operation, an accident happened. There was a blast and his parents got caught. The procedure had cured Lee and gave him new powers, but at the cost of his parents' lives. On that day, Mr. Negative was born. After the loss of his mom and dad, Lee vowed to avenge their deaths by killing the man responsible, Norman Osborn. But in his pursuit of revenge, others have died in his wake. Other mothers and fathers, with sons now all alone. Back in Kraven's arena, Miles was able to beat Lee, but Lee grabs a hold of Miles, forcing the fight to go from a physical battle to a psychological one. They have now entered Miles' mind. In this realm, Lee takes on the form of a giant demon, guiding Miles into the depths of his soul. We can view this whole sequence, and in actuality, all of Miles' interactions with Lee, as something called shadow integration, or shadow work. According to Jung, shadow work is is a psychological process of self-reflection with the goal of acknowledging, understanding, and integrating the hidden, repressed, or less conscious parts of our personality. In this sequence, we see this play out as Miles goes deeper into the layers of his psyche. Each layer a combat trial that begins with a friend or a family member confronting Miles with his own doubts, fears, and insecurities. When Miles enters the last trial, a vision of his father guides him through the rubble of City Hall. This was where he died, and this is where Lee committed his greatest act of terror. On this ground, Miles hears the voice of his father praising him, but then disappointment creeps in.
I've been watching you,
You have?
and it hurts. What happened to the boy that I raised? You're a coward. Staying with my family.
He calls Miles a fraud, telling him that he can try and hide behind that mask, but he knows who he is. This can refer to Miles hiding behind his Spider-Man identity, but I think it's actually deeper than that. In reality, Miles is wearing two masks, the one he wears as Spider-Man and the one he wears as Miles Morales. This other mask is Miles's persona. According to Jung, the persona is the social mask we wear and present to the outside world. It's the personality or role we assume as a way to conform to societal norms and expectations. On the outside, Miles seems emotionally secure, but Lee was right. Underneath the mask is a scared boy.
What are you doing to me?
Taking a look into your soul, I see a boy, terrified of being alone.
It's only when Miles accepted the truth of his pain that he was able to break free from its hold.
I'm not doing this anymore. You wanna know who I am? I'm the kid whose dad you killed at City Hall.
What?
He died because you decided your problems were more important than all of those people's lives. Jefferson Davis was a hero who saved people from you.
In this battle, Miles comes to the realization that it isn't Lee or even the death of his father that's been holding him back. It's himself. It's the choice of holding on to hate, to let it grow in the dark and control his life. Miles has been projecting all his shame and hurt onto Lee as a way to deal with his inner turmoil. But this time, Miles faced his shadow head on, and through this process, was able to heal and become a stronger person. After this breakthrough, the two returned back to Kraven's arena. Listening to Miles' story made Lee realize that he was no different from Osborn, and now he is granting Miles the permission to execute him. But to his surprise, Miles helps Lee escape and tells him to go find Spider-Man, which begs the question, where's Peter? In the next scene, we meet Peter at his lowest point. In this part of the game, he has driven his friends away, and now he's all alone. The only relationship that matters to him now is with the symbiote. The symbiote. The reason why all of us were hyped for this game in the first place. And for good reason. When I saw this in the reveal,
Shut up and take my money.
I was like, I'm totally on board. This is sick. And it is, you know, the symbiote's cool, the new suit is dope, it's slick, it's powerful, and that's the reason why it's dangerous. It's apparent when playing Spider-Man 2 that Insomniac drew from multiple sources when crafting their own symbiote story. In this game, the symbiote was an alien life form used to treat the illness of Peter's best friend, Harry Osborn. After being bedridden for so long, Harry can finally stand and walk. With the symbiote, he can catch up in the life he's been missing. It gave him a new beginning, but it also gave him power.
You know what this means, right? We both have superpowers. Just think about all the stuff we could do to heal the world!
With the symbiote, Harry is imbued with superhuman strength, speed, and durability. He's his own superhero. Eventually, Pete and Harry would team up to rescue Dr. Connors, aka the Lizard, from Kraven's hideout. But after finding the Doctor, Kraven guts Spider-Man with his blade, before throwing his limp body into the air. Outside, MJ finds Peter lifeless on the ground, and after picking him up, players are forced to trudge on as Spider-Man slowly fades away. When Harry sees his friend on the brink of death, the symbiote melts away from his body. By its own will, the alien begins to fuse with Peter, and by some dark miracle, resurrects him from the dead.
What happened? I don't know.
With the symbiote, Peter is given unbridled power. Players unlock new abilities, as well as a rage mode that gives you the power to attack enemies relentlessly.
Just what Kraven has been searching for.
And I feel sorry for him.
Now, as a gamer, this is really, really fun. To be like IGN, playing with the PS5 controller, I could really feel the power of the symbiote. But if you're at all familiar with the symbiote storyline, we all know that this high Peter is on right now will only bring him to his lowest point. The symbiote can mean many things, but I think the most apt interpretation would be to compare it to drug addiction. Yuri Lowenthal, the voice actor of Peter Parker, has said that his portrayal of symbiote Spider-Man was rooted in how people with addiction behave. After Peter bonds with the symbiote, he starts lashing out at others. He experiences blackouts where he forgets what he did last night. And despite this thing ruining his life, he needs to keep it. He can't let go of it.
It makes me a better Spider-Man.
But I think it's important to point out that all these bad things Pete is doing is still him. Sure, he normally wouldn't behave this way, but these emotions and actions didn't just come out of nowhere. The symbiote doesn't just corrupt, it also reveals. And this brings us back to Carl Jung. From a Jungian perspective, we can view the symbiote as Pete's shadow. And as we'll see later on in this game, the symbiote can be anyone's shadow. This alien substance exposes parts of ourselves that we've kept hidden from the world. And for Peter, what's revealed is his resentment and anger. I want to take us back to a moment where Peter and Miles talk after fighting Sandman.
Think he's mad at me?
Stress masquerades as anger sometimes. Just keep looking for people to help.
Now you sound like you're angry.
Come on! You've known me for a long time. When have you ever seen me angry?
That one time we were playing a board game at your place and you kept losing.
I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at the universe!
This moment foreshadows Miles' fear of disappointing his friends and family. This dialogue also reveals Peter's hidden rage. And I think that's why when Peter says he's never angry, Miles is like, nah, I think that's cap, man. But looking on the outside, I'd have to agree with Peter. For the most part, he seems pretty well composed, and you can chalk this up to, age. At this stage of his life, he's 25 years old, and he's done a lot of growing up. Which is why I find it interesting that right after this dialogue, we're met with a flashback that brings us to Peter's early years. In this scene, Daily Bugle publisher J. Jonah Jameson is doing what he does best, decrying Spider-Man as a menace. Hearing this, Peter slams the wall with his fist. The punch was so loud that it forced Aunt May to walk up to Peter's room. Seeing the hole in the wall, Aunt May asks if Pete's doing all right. And in typical Parker fashion, he lies and says, "I'm good," when things are definitely not good. What we learn here is that Peter has a habit of hiding his struggles. Underneath his demure appearance is an angry and hurting boy, and that kid is still there. Yeah, Peter is a chill and happy dude, but we can view his personality as part of his persona. The problem with stowing these issues away is that they never really leave. They just hide in the dark and influence us in unconscious ways. This is called shadow possession. As Jung puts it, a man who is possessed by a shadow is always standing in his own light and falling into his own traps, living below his own level. When a person is possessed by their shadow, what is unconscious takes over their being. As a result, the shadow animates them to do things they normally wouldn't do. And in the context of Spider-Man 2, isn't this exactly what the symbiote does with its host? The symbiote brings to the surface all the things Peter has repressed over the years. He's angry and bitter at a world that always seems to screw him over. And whenever he does do something right, he's always punished for it. So many of his heroic deeds are not only unappreciated, but are denounced. For Peter, life is a battle he can't win, and the symbiote gives him the chance to get back at the world.
That one time we were playing a board game at your place and you kept losing.
I wasn't angry at you! I was angry at the universe!
But the irony here is that many of the faults Peter finds with the world and with others is also found within himself. This is how the shadow takes shape. If you remember, our shadows are seen through projection. Peter projects his shortcomings onto others without realizing that he's also guilty. The most obvious example of this is when Peter fights the symbiote version of Mary Jane, his girlfriend. Look, I didn't expect Insomniac to go here, but they did. This whole battle was the strangest form of couples therapy I've seen. But despite how bizarre this whole situation was, there's a lot to derive from it. Throughout this whole boss fight, MJ vents out all her frustration and anger at Peter.
Always about you! You can't keep a job! You can't pay the mortgage! My life is constantly interrupted by you! Looking for answers! Please! Because you lost a job or can't pay a bill!
Like, dude, I felt violated playing this. But what stands out to me is that by the end of this battle, Peter recognizes his own selfishness, how he's been ungrateful, and apologizes to MJ for not taking into account her feelings.
I'm sorry I caused you so much pain! The house! My job! Our life together! I promised you I'd be better, but I wasn't!
The symbiote reveals to us a paradox that, in a sense, there's more truth in the dark than in the light. In the light, I'm forced to wear a mask, a persona, that complies with the world's standards and how I ought to behave, on how I ought to feel. But in the dark, I don't have to hide my intentions or my feelings. I'm already hidden. What's important to note is that Peter was only able to help MJ because he was helped by Miles. Before Peter's encounter with Scream, he still had the symbiote. And trust me, I don't think symbiote Peter would have been able to help MJ.
No wonder your family left you! Ugh, you're not strong enough!
I want to take us back to Peter's lowest point when he still had the symbiote. After Lee escapes from Kraven's hideout, Genki notifies Peter that he can be found near Feast. On the rooftop, Peter finds Lee overlooking what he once was. Peter immediately strikes him, but Lee isn't there to fight. Instead, he informs Peter that Miles is imprisoned in Kraven's mansion east of the city. He tells him that he owes a debt to Miles, and even offers to help. But Peter rejects this offer and flies off on his own. The irony of this situation is that by the end of this mission, it'll be Miles saving Kraven from Peter, not the other way around. Peter was about to end the Hunter permanently. And if it weren't for Miles leaping in, Kraven would have died. It's here Miles makes a terrifying realization. He has to fight Peter. In this section of the game, players take control of Miles, as the two Spider-Men are now forced into combat. But this is more than just a battle, it's an intervention. As Miles fights Peter, Peter's fighting with himself, struggling with the darkness that has overtaken him. By the end of the fight, Peter was able to break free of the symbiote's grip. It's important to note that none of this would have been possible if it weren't for Miles dealing with his own problems first. Miles was only able to help with Peter's darkness after he dealt with his. After the bros hug it out, Dr. Connors informs Peter of a startling discovery. It turns out that a piece of the symbiote still resides in him. Peter understands well the danger of keeping this creature alive, so he decides to dispose of it in Oscorp. It's there he finds Harry, begging Pete to give him the symbiote back. I found this moment to be very Shakespearean and tragic. I can understand where Harry's coming from. To him, it's like, I gave you life yet you take it from me, so I'm justified in my anger. Sensing his pain, the symbiote broke out of its container and fused with Harry. This union created Venom, a hulking shadow that looms over Spider-Man. After this transformation, Venom clutches Spider-Man with his claw and just yeets the guy across the room. Now, what happens next is arguably the best moment in the game. Players are now able to control Venom as they rampage throughout Oscorp. Gameplay-wise, this is awesome, but story-wise, this is a tragedy. Peter just lost a friend, and Norman lost a son, all to this monster. Once Venom breaks out of Oscorp, he creates nests that spread the symbiote throughout the city, infecting anyone who comes into contact. One of these nests is found in City Hall. Both Spider-Men hear of this and swing over to try to find Harry. When they get there, they find scores of people who've already been infected. Both heroes are now forced to fight, in the hopes that they can pull these people out of the symbiote's clutches. But there were too many. Peter and Miles get swarmed. Buried by the infected, all seems lost. When suddenly, a hand reaches out to Miles and rescues him from the swarm. It was Lee. Lee then clears the horde, and revealed below is Peter writhing on the ground. The symbiote inside of Peter had awakened and is now taking over him. Lee and Miles realize that the only way to stop the infection is to remove the symbiote from its root. The only solution is to enter Peter's mind.
It has a stronger hold on him than I thought.
Where do we start?
We have to find the source of his pain. Follow me. I'll try and lead you to where it's darkest. But I can't promise what we'll find.
Upon entering Peter's psyche, Lee and Miles find themselves in the raft. In this cage, the cells open, and waves of prisoners begin to flood in. As Lee and Miles fight these enemies, they're embodying Peter's struggle as Spider-Man, that to show mercy only causes more pain. We see here that the slim chance of reform is literally overrun by enemies that keep coming back and keep hurting. At the end of the sequence, the screen turns black, and what's revealed is the symbiote's solution.
Did you do that?
No.
The symbiote. He killed them all.
Problem solved.
That's not what Pete thinks.
No. But it might be how he feels.
As we crawl through the cavern, we see the corpses of villains strung up by the symbiote's dark web. What we learn here is that beneath Peter's heroic ideal is the desire to end his enemies permanently. The symbiote reveals to us that Peter has been struggling with these two conflicting desires for a long time. At the end of the tunnel, we see Aunt May's house stranded alone in the sea. Miles and Lee fly to the island, and once inside, Miles tears down a wall, the same wall that Peter hit when he was younger. Crossing the barrier, Lee and Miles find themselves at feast. As we make our way through, Lee confesses to Miles that he regrets what he has done to him and his father.
Why did you do it? What did you want?
Revenge. Norman Osborn's the reason my parents are dead. So I dedicated my life to making his hell. Instead, you lost your father. Peter lost May. And I was too stubborn to see I had become what I despised most. I'm sorry, Miles.
See, in the process of helping Peter and Miles, Lee was also able to help himself. He needed to confront Miles as much as Miles needed to confront him. To Lee, Miles represents the consequence of being Mr. Negative and all the guilt associated with it. Partnering together brings closure for both of them. The two need each other, and it's only by working together that they're able to save Peter. After breaking through the symbiote, Miles and Lee see Peter mourning over the loss of Aunt May. Peter feels responsible for her death, and he's been carrying this pain and guilt for a long time. He's been hiding it from everybody, from himself. This is how the symbiote assumes control. It's drawn to pain and uses it to enslave its host. The symbiote scabs over deep wounds and pushes anyone who gets too close. It's only when Peter is honest with his suffering and allows others to enter into it that he's finally able to break free from the symbiote. After this breakthrough, the three return back to City Hall, and what happens next is the culmination of everything this game has been leading up to. Peter rises again, but instead of a black suit, he's dressed in white. You see, when Lee used his powers to free Peter, his energy negated the harmful effects of the symbiote, granting Peter the anti-venom suit. The anti-venom suit and the symbiote suit have deep psychological and symbolic meaning. Both explore the duality of human nature. The fact that these suits are organic just drives this point forward. They aren't made by Peter, but both arise from within him. This symbolizes how the duality of human nature exists within us, and isn't something we can just fabricate. With the anti-venom suit, Peter is able to use the symbiote inside of him as a way to free others infected by the symbiote. This ability reveals the dual nature of poison. Under the right context and quantity, poison can be a cure, but the opposite is also true. If abused, medicine can become poisonous. This duality is also embodied in the character literally called Venom and his desire to heal the world by infecting everyone with the symbiote.
We're going to heal the world.
Next, let's talk about the designs of both the anti-venom suit and symbiote suit. Notice how both designs act as the inverse of each other. The main color motifs are black and white. The color black often represents darkness, death, and power. White usually symbolizes purity, light, and new beginnings. So with this context in mind, when we look at the symbiote suit, we see that Peter is covered in black. The symbolic meaning behind this suit is made manifest in its power and in how it corrupts its user and their relationships. But the white spider emblem shows us that despite the outer darkness of the suit, inside is a form of purity, that the person in the suit can still be salvaged despite their corruption. This is in contrast to the anti-venom suit where Peter's dressed in white but with a black emblem. To me, this suit represents Peter's integration of his shadow. All of the things he has repressed have now been confronted and brought to light, making him more complete and whole. But we can view the black spider emblem as the dark nature that's still present within Peter. Just because Peter has dealt with his darkness, it doesn't mean it's gone. He just has a better understanding of it and knows how to use it to serve the good. To Young, darkness is something we have to engage with for the rest of our lives. And this brings us back to Peter's flashback. After seeing how hurt Peter was, Aunt May gives him a piece of advice.
Every year, I wanted a new feather in my cap. But when I tried to add honor roll student on top, I fell apart. Instead of being good at a few things, I wasn't good at anything. So, I scaled back. Balance is a process, not a destination.
Like Peter, Aunt May tried to juggle too many responsibilities when she was younger. She warns Peter that when you try to be good at everything, you end up not being good at anything. There has to be a give and take, a push and pull. For Peter, this advice isn't only about balancing responsibilities, but also about finding balance within himself. Aunt May's words are analogous to Jung's concept of individuation. Individuation is the process of integrating all the conscious and unconscious elements of ourselves with the aim towards greater self-awareness, wholeness, and authenticity. And a key part of individuation is recognizing and integrating your shadow. This process is a lifelong endeavor. One never arrives on this journey, but by taking steps towards individuation, one continues to grow and be greater. This was what our heroes were able to do for each other. By confronting their darkness, Lee can continue in his path towards redemption. Miles can finally move forward in his life, and Peter's now able to heal from his guilt. The fact that their growth happened in City Hall is also thematically fitting. What was once the site of death and terror was transformed into a place of renewal. Aunt May showed Peter, and by extension all of us, that when you help someone, you help everyone, and that a crucial step towards balance is learning to be honest with our pain. One of my favorite moments in the game is Aunt May and Peter drawing on his wall. It's such a simple and profound way of showing us how we can take our hurt and turn it into something beautiful. Pain can leave us alone in the dark, but it doesn't have to. Knowing that when I suffer, others suffer the same. There's solidarity in that. We're all hurting, and we can all heal. We just need to let the light in. So what'd you guys think of my Spider-Man 2 analysis? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm telling you guys, this game is chock full of material, and I only covered a portion of what the game has to offer. So if you want to see more Spider-Man 2 analyses, let me know in the comments also. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, it helps support the channel. Subscribe and hit that bell icon to be updated on when I post my next video. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, peace out.